Can you spare a meal for my sick brother? The hungry girl whispered, her voice trembling with shame and hope, unaware she was speaking to a billionaire, and what he did next would melt your heart. At a crowded city street corner, amidst the rush of polished shoes and impatient horns, a thin girl in worn shoes and a faded sweater clutched an empty lunchbox to her chest. Her stomach growled, but her eyes held only one desperate thought: finding food for her sick little brother waiting at home. She lifted her gaze, soft, scared, yet determined, and asked the man in the crisp suit standing before her, not knowing he was a billionaire with the power to change lives. His world of power, money, and boardrooms collided with her world of hunger, worry, and whispered prayers. He paused, seeing her hunger, hearing her painful whisper, and sensing a story behind her trembling request. But who was she really? And why was her sick brother depending on a miracle today? Why would a billionaire stop for a hungry girl when the world rushed past her as if she were invisible? And what would the billionaire do next? Deny her, ignore her, or change both their fates forever? Emily Carter's hands wrapped tightly around the dented lunchbox she carried, like it was a fragile treasure instead of an empty plastic container scraped clean the night before. The city around her buzzed with life, laughter outside cafes, vendors shouting deals, boots splashing through melted snow, but none of it reached her. Hunger had a way of muting the world. Her little brother, Luke, only 8 years old, lay at home burning with fever, shivering under their thin blanket. He hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. Emily had promised him she'd return with food. She always tried to keep her promises, but life didn't always care about promises. She swallowed hard, forcing down the emptiness clawing inside her stomach. Her father always said, "Pride won't feed you, Em. Courage will." But her father was gone now, lost to a construction accident 2 winters ago. Their mother had disappeared long before that, leaving nothing but an old photograph and broken trust. That left Emily, 15, tired, scared, and forced into strength, to raise Luke in their small peeling wall apartment 2 bus stops away. School had become a luxury she couldn't afford. Survival was her curriculum now. As she stood at the corner near a downtown high-rise, people passed her without looking. Businessmen in tailored suits, women with coffee cups and manicured nails. Nobody saw the girl who kept whispering prayers beneath her breath. Nobody noticed the chilled red hands or the quiet desperation in her brown eyes. Except one man. Alexander Reed stepped out of a sleek black town car, the city breeze rustling his charcoal coat. His presence carried an effortless authority, the kind born from board meetings, power negotiations, and the unshakable confidence of someone who controlled empires. Billionaire CEO, philanthropist on magazine covers, a man who had the world at his fingertips, but right now, his mind was elsewhere. He had just come from a conference where everyone shook his hand, smiled at him, admired him. Yet none of it filled the quiet ache inside his chest. Wealth built comfort, not connection, and every polished greeting reminded him of the one person he still wished he could share it all with. His late wife, Carolyn. Gone 2 years, she left a void money couldn't touch. Alexander's heart had been granite since. As he walked, his phone buzzed. A board member again. Meetings, numbers, deals, a life measured in profit margins. He was about to answer when he heard a voice, soft, shaky, but desperate enough to cut through the city noise. "Sir, can you spare a meal for my sick brother?" He stopped mid-stride. Alexander turned and saw her, small frame, hopeful eyes hiding deep exhaustion, hands clutching that empty lunchbox like it held her world. It struck him like a forgotten memory. Caroline used to stop for strangers. She used to say, "Every soul carries a battle you can't see. See them anyway." Emily lowered her gaze, expecting rejection. Most people ignored her. Some tossed coins like she was a pitiful stray. But this man didn't look away. His eyes didn't hold judgment, just something she hadn't seen in a long time. Attention, curiosity, human warmth buried beneath years of steel emotion. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Emily," she whispered. "My brother. He's sick and I just need a meal. Just one plate, anything." His gaze drifted to her shaking hands, the faded threads on her sweater, the courage it took to ask. Inside him something stirred, an echo of empathy long buried under wealth and loss. "How old is he?" Alexander asked. 8, she replied, voice cracking. "His fever got worse last night. I can't let him go hungry too." Her words punched through him harder than any business failure ever could. 8. Caroline had always dreamed of a child. Fate had said no, and now here stood a girl fighting for her brother like a lion cub in winter. He nodded slowly. "Come with me." Shock flickered across Emily's face. He didn't offer money, didn't shoo her away. He walked toward a nearby restaurant, one of the finest downtown, and held the door open. Voices inside drifted, polished conversations, silver cutlery, luxury warmth. Emily froze. People like her did not walk into places like that. The building itself seemed to whisper, "Not for you, I shouldn't," she murmured. "They'll throw me out." Alexander's voice softened, but his resolve didn't. "They won't, you're with me." Emily hesitated. Fear, hope colliding, but hunger and love pushed her feet forward. As she stepped inside behind him, she felt like she was crossing into a different world. Warm air, golden lights, fresh bread scent. Eyes turned to her, some curious, some cold. Alexander noticed, and something else inside him hardened. The world that applauded him would look down on her, not on his watch. Emily clutched her empty lunchbox, wondering what she had just stepped into, and who exactly this man really was. Emily followed Alexander through the restaurant, her steps barely grazing the marble floor. She kept her eyes down, afraid that if she met the gaze of anyone there, she would turn to stone, judged, unworthy, misplaced. Her worn shoes squeaked faintly, out of rhythm with the elegant hush of the wealthy lunchtime crowd. She held her breath. Every instinct told her she didn't belong. Alexander walked with the quiet command of a man used to being seen, greeted, respected. Staff straightened as he passed. A hostess with a polished smile approached until she noticed Emily. The smile faltered. "Mr. Reed," she greeted, voice suddenly tight. "Welcome. Shall I prepare your usual table?" He nodded. "And she's with me." The hostess's gaze shifted to Emily's fraying sleeves and empty lunchbox, confusion flickering into discomfort, then something uglier. Emily braced for rejection the way others learned to brace for cold wind. But Alexander's expression left no room for debate. Authority rolled off him like a silent command. "Yes, of course," the hostess said, quickly recovering. "Right this way." Emily sat opposite him in a booth lined with rich navy leather. She placed the lunchbox on her lap, as if afraid the table might reject it too. The clink of silverware and low hum of conversations filled the room, but all she felt was her heartbeat. A server approached, stiff but composed. "Your order, Mr. Reed?" Alexander set his phone aside, not face down, not buzzing, simply set aside. For her, bring the chef's special, twice, and a take-home portion. "Extra large," Emily blinked. "Twice and extra to take home? For a girl he didn't know?" The server nodded and hurried off. Emily stared at the table, twisting the hem of her sweater nervously. She had eaten in school cafeterias sometimes, back when life was normal, but never a place like this. Never like this. Minutes stretched. Golden chandeliers glistened above them. Emily glanced up once to study Alexander. He wasn't checking his watch, wasn't impatient. He was watching her carefully, as though trying to piece together a puzzle without forcing the pieces. "So," he began, voice measured yet gentle. "Tell me about your brother." Emily swallowed. Talking about Luke meant opening the door to everything she'd been holding alone. But she had already stepped into a world she never dreamed of entering. Maybe courage had momentum. "His name is Luke," she whispered. "He's 8. He's always smiling, and even when he's sick. Says he wants to be strong like Dad was." Her eyes softened with memory. "Dad worked construction. He worked hard. Too hard." A tremor shook her voice. Alexander listened, leaning in slightly, not out of obligation but genuine attention, something Emily hadn't felt from anyone in a long time. When the accident happened, I tried to keep school and work going, but..." Her voice cracked. "Bills piled up. Rent, medicine, food. It got harder. And now Luke has fever and cold chills, and he hasn't eaten since yesterday. I couldn't go to school anymore. I had to be there for him. There's no one else." A silence followed. Not painful, respectful. Alexander's eyes softened with recognition. The kind that comes when two humans recognize a shared invisible bruise. He knew loss meant loneliness in crowded rooms. "You're very brave," he said quietly. Emily shook her head. "Brave would be if I could fix things." I'm just trying not to fail him. The food arrived. Steaming bowls, plates of roasted chicken, vegetables, warm bread, and soup fragrant enough to make Emily's heart ache just smelling it. She stared, overwhelmed. When was the last time she had seen so much food meant for her? Go ahead, Alexander encouraged. Her hands trembled as she lifted the spoon. She took one bite, then another, slower than hunger demanded, savoring each flavor like prayer beads counted one by one.
She didn't devour.
She respected the meal the way the starving respect grace, and yet tears formed anyway, because relief could hurt too, especially when it felt like it didn't belong to you. Alexander pretended not to notice her wiping her eyes with her sleeve. But he noticed everything. Emily, he said softly, how long have you been taking care of Luke alone? She hesitated. Since Dad died. And before that? Mom left. We were little. She said she'd come back. A hollow laugh escaped. She didn't. Alexander's jaw tightened. Abandonment echoed through him too, not the same story, but the same fracture. Caroline's absence still felt fresh. It lived in his ribs like unfinished breath. Life wasn't supposed to be like this, Emily whispered. Dad always tried to make us believe things would get better. But sometimes, she looked down, sometimes I get scared they never will. He leaned back, watching her with something deeper than sympathy. Respect. Strength didn't always roar. Sometimes it was a girl holding an empty lunchbox and facing the world anyway. You shouldn't have to carry so much alone, he said gently. And you shouldn't have to care, she replied quietly. Confused by his kindness, he almost answered, we all need someone when the world feels cold. But the words stayed inside. Instead, he asked, do you trust me enough to let me help you and your brother today? Emily looked up, nervous and hopeful at once. Trust was heavy, but hunger and love weighed heavier. She nodded slowly. Yes, Alexander smiled, and the first real smile in months. He didn't know why helping her stirred something warm and long buried inside him. But it did, and Emily still didn't know who he was, not yet. The world would have bowed to his name, but she didn't care about wealth or status. She cared about Luke. And right now, she believed this man might be a miracle wrapped in a winter coat. But life had a way of testing miracles, and both their worlds were only beginning to collide. The winter sun hung low when they stepped out of the restaurant, a soft orange glow brushing the street. Emily hugged the warm takeout bag to her chest like it was a shield against the world, or perhaps a promise that tonight, Luke wouldn't sleep hungry. She walked close to Alexander, uncertain whether to speak, but afraid silence might make the moment disappear like a dream. Alexander's driver opened the car door, but he waved him off. I'll walk, he said, turning to Emily. Show me where you live. Shock flashed in her eyes. Nobody had ever followed where her life led. Not into the cracked corners, not into the reality she managed each day. People with power stayed high above the struggles of street bus riders and peeling walls. Yet here he was. You want to come? She asked quietly. If you'll let me, he replied. Another piece of fear loosened its grip in her chest. She nodded, adjusting the straps of her backpack, the same one she used back when school still felt like a future, not a memory. They walked toward the bus stop. Alexander didn't call for a car, didn't offer to call one. He matched her stride. Emily wondered if billionaires ever rode buses. Then she wondered if she even knew what billionaires did. She didn't know yet. She was walking beside one. Her neighborhood appeared like the earth had folded itself away from fortune and forgotten to unfold again. Buildings tired from existing, windows patched with tape, stair railings that seemed to sigh under too many hands. Life here didn't shine. It survived. Alexander took it in quietly, not with pity, but with gravity. His world was penthouses and quiet elevators. Hers was stairwells that echoed and heaters that groaned like they were giving their best even when they were failing. It humbled him. They reached a small apartment building. Emily pushed the door open. It stuck halfway, swollen wood forcing her to shoulder it. Alexander watched her, how she didn't complain, didn't sigh. She fought quietly, like she was used to every battle being hers alone. The hallway smelled faintly of damp concrete and old meals. Emily guided him up 2 flights. She paused outside a chipped brown door and turned to him, looking suddenly self-conscious. It's not much, she whispered. Please don't judge us. His voice was steady. Homes aren't measured by walls, Emily. They're measured by love. Her throat tightened. It had been a long time since words felt warm enough to rest in. She unlocked the door. Inside, the apartment was small. A sofa with fading fabric. A small heater trying bravely to warm the room. Grocery bags were used as trash bags. But it was clean, spotless in the way spaces kept by grateful hands tend to be. And there, curled under 2 layered blankets, lay Luke. Cheeks flushed, hair messy, breathing uneven. "Luke," Emily called softly, voice trembling with tenderness. "I brought food. And a friend." Luke stirred, half awake, blinking heavy eyes. "Am?" His voice was thin, fragile. "You came back." "Of course," she whispered, setting the food down and brushing his hair back. "I always come back." Alexander stood near the doorway, watching the scene as though seeing a universe he hadn't known existed. A universe where love wasn't cushioned by wealth, but carved out of struggle. Emily offered Luke soup first. His little hands wrapped around the spoon clumsily, but he ate slow and grateful. "Thank you," he mumbled between tiny bites. Alexander's chest tightened. His mind flashed briefly. Caroline kneeling beside a child she never got to have. The what-ifs of a life cut short. He blinked them away, grounding himself in the moment before him. Luke's eyes drifted to Alexander. "Are you Emily's friend?" he asked weakly, attempting a smile. Alexander kneeled beside him. "I hope so." The boy nodded, satisfied. "Then you're my friend too." It was simple, pure, no conditions. No judgments. A child's acceptance, freely given. Alexander hadn't realized how long it had been since someone accepted him without expectation. Without knowing his name, his power, his worth in numbers. Something inside him softened. Dangerously close to breaking. "You're really kind," Emily whispered quietly to him, as though admitting it surprised her too. "I don't know why you're doing this, but thank you." He looked at her, at a girl who carried life on her shoulders and still spoke gently. "Sometimes," he said softly, "the world gives us a chance to be who we wish we were." Emily studied him, confused yet touched. People usually helped for a moment. Never walked into her world like this, never looked at her pain without flinching. She wondered if kindness like his still existed, or if she had simply been blessed with the rarest piece of humanity today. Luke finished half his bowl before sleep tugged at him again. Emily covered him with the blanket, kissing his forehead. Alexander stepped into the tiny kitchen, giving them privacy, and stood there quietly, like a man learning reverence. The apartment light flickered. A neighbor slammed a door somewhere down the hall. A siren wailed faintly from far away, yet the room held something sacred, a fragile peace. Emily rejoined him in the kitchen. "He'll be okay tonight," she said. Relief gentled her features. "You saved us today." Alexander shook his head. "You saved him every day. I just brought dinner." She stared at him, a long, searching gaze like she was trying to understand someone who didn't quite fit the world she knew. And then, in a whisper, "Who are you really?" Alexander inhaled slowly. The question hung in the air, heavy with fate. He wasn't ready to answer, not yet. The truth would change everything, and tomorrow, the world would catch up to what happened today. Night had settled deep. City lights flickered in through cracked blinds, scattering faint gold across the small apartment. Emily stood in front of Alexander, waiting for his answer. Her question still hung between them. "Who are you really?" He exhaled slowly, gaze drifting toward the sleeping boy in the next room, then back to her. He looked almost vulnerable. Men like him weren't used to explaining themselves. Not in boardrooms, and certainly not in places like this. But this girl deserved truth. "My name is Alexander Reed," he said softly. Emily blinked. No recognition, he'd expected that. The world that adored him wasn't hers. "I run a company," he added. "What kind of company?" she asked innocently. "Reed Global Investments," he replied. Silence. A beat. Then her breath hitched as realization struck like a slow-rolling tide. Reed Global. That name lived on the news screen she passed outside electronics stores. On city billboards she could never imagine entering. On the side of skyscrapers she walked past wishing her life looked different. "You're him?" she whispered, as if saying it too loud might break the room. "You're that Alexander Reed?" He nodded once, lightly, not proudly, humbly. Emily stepped back, hands trembling. Her world tilted. The floor felt farther away. The air too thin, She looked at the soup bowl, the take-home bag, the billionaire standing in her tiny kitchen. You're a billionaire, she breathed, stunned. And you still walked to my home? Sat with me here? Let me talk like her voice broke. Like I mattered. You do matter, he said, firm and gentle all at once. More than most people I sit with in rooms filled with diamonds and lies. Tears welled in her eyes. She shook her head, overwhelmed. But why? Why help me? Why us? Alexander's voice lowered. Because once someone saved me when I was lost. My wife, Caroline. She taught me the value of stopping for those who need someone. After she passed, I forgot how to see people. He gestured around. You reminded me, Emily's tears fell. Not from sadness, from disbelief that kindness could be so real. Suddenly a soft cough came from Luke's room. Instinct kicked in. She rushed over, checking his forehead with worry-quick hands. Alexander followed, quiet, watching how her entire heart lived inside one little boy. He's still warm, she murmured anxiously. He needs medicine. But I need to work tomorrow or rent. Alexander gently touched her shoulder. You won't lose your home, she froze. What? He reached into his coat and pulled out a business card. Simple, white, elegant. He scribbled a number on the back. This is my personal contact. If your landlord gives trouble, call me. If Luke needs a doctor, I'll send one. You will not lose your home again to struggle. Emily stared, shaking. I can't accept. It's not charity, he interrupted softly. It's the world paying you back for holding it together when it tried to break you. Her lip trembled. Gratitude flooded her like warmth after long freezing. And tomorrow, Alexander continued gently, I'll arrange a private pediatric appointment for Luke. Full checkup. No bills, then once he's well, we'll get you back in school. You're too bright not to finish, she gasped, a sound half sob, half hope. School? I don't even know if I remember how to be a normal kid. Then we'll relearn life together, he said with a sad smile. I'm relearning too. For a moment, they simply breathed in each other's presence and the brokenness, the survival. The humanity shared across two worlds that never should have collided but did. Then suddenly, a knock rattled the door. 3 sharp bangs. Emily stiffened. Fear flashed in her eyes. It's the landlord. Rent is due tomorrow. Alexander opened the door before she could stop him. A heavy-set man stood outside. Irritation etched across his face until he looked up and saw Alexander Reed standing inside this apartment. His jaw dropped. He stuttered. Mr. Reed? Sir, what? Alexander stood tall, presence calm but commanding. Emily will not be bothered about rent this month. And going forward, have maintenance fix the heater and the door jamb. Send me the invoice. The landlord nodded frantically, sweating like he'd just seen Judgment Day arrive in a tailored coat. Yes, sir. Immediately, sir. Door closed. Silence. Emily stared like she'd witnessed magic. You didn't have to do that. I know, he said softly. But I wanted to. She looked at him, really looked, and whispered, Thank you. I don't know how to repay you. You already have, he replied. You reminded me I still have a heart to melt. Her eyes filled again. For once, tears didn't feel like defeat. They felt like sunrise. Alexander knelt one last time by Luke, gently adjusting the blanket. Rest, little fighter. The world has more in store for you, Luke murmured in his sleep. Emily placed her hand over Alexander's, and for a moment wealth and poverty didn't exist. Only 2 souls and hope dancing quietly in a warm, small room. Alexander stood to leave. At the doorway, he paused. Emily, tomorrow let's start building a life that isn't about surviving, but living. She nodded, voice whisper thin but full of new strength. Tomorrow. He gave one final look, a look promising protection, compassion, a future. Then he stepped into the night. Emily closed the door slowly, pressing her forehead to the wood, heart full in a way hunger could never empty again. Tomorrow would come with light. And they would rise with it because sometimes a whispered plea for a meal becomes the beginning of a miracle that melts even the coldest heart.